Ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, G3 Iron here, and we now know the great revelation about Scarabs. We know what they are, we know what they do, and we now have a posting of exactly, besides being just troll teasers, exactly what their mechanics are. So let's take a look. First off, we've got previewed for us today by Bex the Polished Divination Scarab, which gives you the following modifier. Area drops 200% more divination cards. If you read the bottom of this particular scarab, it says it can be used in the Templar Laboratory or a personal map device to add modifiers to a map. So for the vast majority of us, many of us know that there are a couple of different things that you can do to modify a map. Of course, you can roll all sorts of different currency on it: transmutes, alterations, alchemies, chaos orbs. I guess if you wanted to use exalteds, you could. But yeah, all sorts of different ways to change the way how maps work. But you also can, of course, use sacrifice fragments in order to give you a hidden item quantity bonus while you're mapping. So, for instance, you could put one map into one of the 4 quadrants of the map device and then fill 1, 2, or 3 fragments that would be in their appropriate slots that will add 5, 10, or 15% increased item quantity. Well, what Scarabs are doing is allowing you to have a more focused or more specific way of looting in specific areas. And this really looks awesome. Realistically, for pretty much every type of league. I see this as being probably a big buff for solo self-found, just because in the solo self-found game you cannot necessarily farm, or well, you can necessarily farm for specific uniques, but most of the time that you're farming for specific uniques or for build enabling uniques in solo self-found, most of the time you're farming specific zones that those items can drop in straight up, or you're farming zones where divination cards drop that can farm you those very specific cards that are going to lead you to turn in to get your unique, your build enabling unique. But what the Polished Divination Scarab allows you to do is run a whole lot less, in theory, areas or zones, because you're simply going to have more divination cards drop per time you're running the zone. Now, we have no idea on the frequency of these things. We have no idea how rare they'll be, how valuable they'll be in the marketplace, whether or not, you know, they're gonna drop on the level of a divine or an exalt, or whether they're gonna drop with the frequency of a chaos. We have no idea if they're going to be prophecy related, that maybe you can just boom, fulfill a prophecy and get a whole bunch of scarabs that'll drop off of, let's say, a rogue exile, or off of a spirit, or off of maybe potentially a unique mob. We don't know yet, but we do know that they look awesome, and this allows for more targeted farming. At least the Polished Divination Scarab does. Now, moving on to the second the second scarab, the Gilded Breach Scarab. Everybody loves Breach. Breach as a mechanic and as a league is with rose-colored glasses, full-on nostalgia blast. Everybody looks back at Breach League and says, okay, that's the pinnacle of Path of Exile. That is Path of Exile at its best. You tag something that's an optional tag, the hand in the ground, and then you just kill a bunch of stuff and you get a bunch of loot. Like that's what the action RPG genre is. And what the Gilded Breach Scarab allows you to do is manipulate your map or your area such that the area will contain 3 additional breaches. Now, notice that this is additional breaches, so this isn't something that is going to provide or manipulate if your map has already rolled breaches. So if your map, let's say through the map device, through Zana mods, or simply through rolling on the map, you automatically already have breaches contained in the map, what the Gilded Breach Scarab will do is give you 3 additional breaches. So let's say your zone naturally spawns 3 breaches on their own. If you use a Gilded Breach Scarab on it, that would then mean there's another 3, meaning you'd have 6 breaches in a zone. Now, something that we don't know yet, and I'll bring this up because this is where it gets really crazy to think about. We don't know yet how many scarabs you can use inside a map device, and whether or not they're going to be limited to 1 or 2 or 3, or maybe these different types of scarabs. You'll notice there are different colorations on these scarabs, if those are going to interact in any sort of way or lock one another out. But it would be really awesome if, for instance, you could just load up 3 different gilded breach scarabs if you're farming for, let's say, breach stones or breach fragments in order to go and farm a bunch of breach bosses. Or let's say, again, if your target farming is owned, load up 3 different polished divination scarabs and then have 600% more divination cards drop. Then, you use the monstrous treasure prophecy, and you just have like the best map of all time. Anyway, this looks awesome. So thanks so much to Grinding Gear Games, to Bex, and to Chris, and to the whole promotion team for the way how they continue to troll us and hype us up with these Scarab teases that they've been teasing us with really for the last week or so since Chris first mentioned Scarab. It's really, really fun to be a part of that, and it's fun today especially to see all the build-up pay off with these really, really cool and unique, interesting looking ways to manipulate maps and endgame zones. I remember about 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, there was a lot of complaints. This was pre 3.0. There were a lot of complaints about like, hey, there's not enough to do in the endgame of Path of Exile. I haven't seen that complaint really for 2 years. It's just there's so much to do, and they just keep adding more and more things to do to be able to manipulate and change the way how you play the game, whether that's softcore, hardcore, whether that's with an open marketplace or with a solo self-found, or even now with private leagues. No matter what, like all of these things that are coming out just seem to make the game more fun. So thanks so much to the whole team for making more stuff that of course we're all going to be interested to use and try out. So what do you guys think? Are you guys going to be using Scarabs? I know as soon as I find one, I'm probably just gonna hoard them at first, because I'll probably watch the market to see what the market does with them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see the drop rates on these, and whether or not there's any kind of unique restrictions on them, because these things look very, very powerful for targeted farming. So yeah, the mystery hasn't necessarily been solved. There's still questions to be asked, but yeah, Scarabs. All right.